Hey, how's it going, everybody? This is DJ McCree of Trap Camp ENT, and we're going to be talking about mastering myths. I know this is like the second time I've talked about this on this channel, but it is one of those things that are apparent that people like to argue about that kind of makes no sense. and and when they're arguing about it, it's just a point of opinion versus fact, and we just kind of like deal with it. But in general, mixing and mastering are two totally different things. Let's get that out. Let's get that out the door or out the window or whatever. They're two totally different things. Mixing is a totally different process from mastering, because when you're mixing, you're dealing with levels and different levels of a track, versus mastering, where you are just dealing with a two track, and you're mastering. That's the typical old school way of doing it. Now most people actually just mix and master at the same time. Much I'm one of those people that like to do that, because I feel like, hey, I know how loud I want my track. I know the feeling of my track and the different levels of my track. So I'm going to mix and master it at the same time, and everything is going to sound basically the same, because I'm going to keep it as simple as possible and attack it that way. Now, most people, when you hand it down to many other engineers and whatnot, they're going to probably do many and multiple things to it that you may or may not agree with. And one of the things that I don't agree with, when people say that mastering, you want to EQ things and all that, and that's where I believe you're overcomplicating your mix. And reason why is because if you're handing something over from a mix, and people think that if you hand it to be mastered and your mix is not good, it's going to sound better. No, it will not. It'll actually sound worse, especially if you're going in and the person's going into the mastering concept and they're adding EQ to a mix that is not balanced. Because in the mixing process, there's things that you could do to keep your stuff level and have a subtle impact, where you will be measuring your transients in such a manner to where you will achieve the balance. Because when you're mastering, you're trying to achieve the overall balance of your dynamic range and your loudness of your track, and that's all it should be. It's just because at the end of the day, like I say, a compressor is a volume envelope. I can't think of. I've worked with many compressors from analog to digital, and I have never seen a compressor that has like EQs and all that on there. Why would you do that? And why would I argue that? Because of this. And I have a project pulled up, but we're gonna discuss this further before we even walk into this concept. Now, the reason why I'm actually going in on this particular theory that people have kind of developed, and I see is kind of rampant amongst the producer community, is because when you're mastering and you add stuff like EQ to a master, and you're not EQing certain things, like if you have like a bell or something like that that's kind of behind or something like that, and you pull it up and the bell is too loud, because I'm just using it because I just did a journey into mixing, and somebody actually commented on the video, was talking about, well, your bells is too loud and such, and I was waiting for you to pull it down, which I ended up doing it. I think he actually commented on that or whatnot, which it's cool, because I'm not against people's opinions and their suggestions, because if you are in music and you're kind of closed-minded, guess what, your music is going to be the result of that, and may or may not resonate with people. But in general, music fans aren't going to know the difference or even complain about it. They're just going to listen to it because they just want to hear good music, by their definition, by the way, because some people have arguments about that as well, what's good and what's not. But yeah, certain music has different feelings and whatnot. You have your rock bands and stuff like that, where you have very aggressive music and whatnot. So you have to treat drums a certain way. Some drums may or may not require certain amounts of compression to the drums or whatnot, to make either drums either more pumpier, which is a buzzword, but that's just something, a term that has been developed, or even even muddying certain parts of your transients or whatever, which is another buzzword. But anyways, it's kind of like I said, it's kind of like comparing a book when we're talking about analog towards digital. It's kind of like comparing a book to the internet, because at the end of the day, one cannot think that analog is far more superior than digital. When you can obviously see that in the digital world you have more possibilities, especially now in today's age where computers are far more stronger than they were about a decade ago. If not just far more superior, where you actually had to use hardware to achieve certain things versus your computer, because your computer could not handle certain plugins because, they didn't, the processors were inferior at the time. Now we're pretty much we have processors that have multi-cores, and multi-coring is been the savior to a lot of things. As you can see, I can stream and make a track or whatnot and not have any problems, unless I have totally added more effects. But more so on the topic about mastering MIPS. The whole entire thing that is like the issue is that people want to say that the EQ, the EQing is a part of the mastering. It's a part of the mixing process, because once again, mixing is totally different from mastering. Because if you hand somebody a bad mix and you try to hand it to the person that is mastering, or if you're trying to master on a mix that is not there, or it does not sound well to you, it's not going to sound better after the mastering process. It's probably going to sound much worse, because the balance is not going to be there. The compressor is going to more or less enhance the imbalanced signals and frequencies, and this is going to be a loud mess. And EQing, what EQing does is it actually adds more frequency, so you're going to actually make things worse in the end result. And much so, even if you're not, and it sounds real good on the speakers, because one thing I'm just going to actually talk about is speakers. Is about speakers, because you have certain kinds of monitors that are better than others. But funny enough, and just I don't remember every last detail of it, but I do remember that the NS10s themselves were not great speakers. I mean, I know a lot of people say that the NS10s are the best speakers that you could have, and there's certain people that say that the KRKs are the best that they could have, even though the KRKs are ranked amongst the best, and then you had the Haflers and other speakers that I cannot remember right now. Yeah, I'm not even going to try to remember all the speakers, different event 2020s and whatnot. So what I'm trying to get to is that the NS10s were around during the Michael Jackson Thriller album. The engineer that worked on him, I can't remember his name. I'll probably get back to this, because I know it's going to be a part 3 soon, because somebody's going to argue with me. But he got the NS10s, whatnot. They listened to him. The NS10s were by far probably some cheap speakers, and what the brilliance of it was that the speakers were so cheap, and they sounded so flat or whatnot, that they was able to focus on certain frequencies that you could not hear on their more expensive monitors. And so as an end result of that album doing so well and it sounding so great, because to me it's probably one of the best mixed albums of our lifetime right now. So that championed that speaker being an industry standard, because of somebody proven so, because everybody liked that mix. So that's usually how that works in that particular area. Now, what I'm trying to drive at is that you got to look at the concept that they was looking at. Now, and spending on that concept is that when you're adding like EQ to a set of monitors or whatnot that you're doing a mix to, and it sounds good on those monitors, does not mean that it's going to sound good on all aspects of music that you will listen to. things that you'll listen to music on, because you can very well stick it in your car, and in the car it's going to sound horrible because it might not have the same same amount of frequency range as those monitors, and much worse. So thinking about that and thinking about how you EQ things, that is overcomplicating your mix. You're overcomplicating your master. And it's a phrase for that. Now you can mix now you can use EQing on the master, and then listen to it and kind of engage a frequency level that you might on your speakers or whatever. They do have like frequency analyzers and stuff like that are even free downloads where you can actually kind of get a concept of how it will sound in a car, or how it would sound on some earbuds and some headphones or whatever like that, and you will be able to achieve your overall mix, the overall master, how it sound like on all kinds of different peripherals. So but that doesn't mean that you actually just leave that on there or whatnot, because once again, if you're EQing for one thing or whatever, it's not going to sound the same. So you you have to remember that, because that's very important when you're doing that for mixes. And so I might as well just go ahead and do the demonstration and just show you something, because I have a track pulled up. So we're gonna go here, and so anyways, this is a track I worked on. This is actually a track I worked on last year, and I was actually debating with an engineer yesterday of how, because he was like, "Oh man, well it sounds great to me," and I was like, "Dude, it's not a great mix at all. There's certain things that are done wrong." And I think it might be a little cloggy. So in 3, 2, 1, it's gonna be kind of loud. So make that preparation. 3, 2, 1, and I'm playing.
Listen.
I don't want to play the whole entire track to its entirety, but just there's a certain couple of things that have been kind of wronged in this mix. But for the most part, I guess it was passable. Now, one thing, if you look at the actual cabinet itself, the cabinet itself is in disarray. Now, one, you do not want your any dB meter, doesn't matter what type of dB meter, you want that to be last, because what you're gonna do is you're gonna be reading what it came to prior, and everything after that is going to be added on upon that. So that's going to throw you off when you're doing your mastering, or even if you're doing your mixing, if you have a dB meter in there like that.
Listen.
I can almost guarantee you that is not 4.2 dB. I can guarantee you that it is much higher. It's probably either plus 6 or plus 8 dB, and I know that by actually checking out the dB meter on my the UV on my actual sound card. It was in the red every single time that it hit. The snare hit and when the kick drum hit. Now the kick drum, I'm cool with it. You know what I'm saying? I'm cool with the actual the kick drum being aggressive and loud. However, I'm not cool with the snare being that loud. And and it was funny because the first thing that he turned down was the snare, and he was saying, "Well, the mix sounds great, so it's nice and sharp." Now, to another person, I was like, "Well, it's gonna sound good." I told him, I was like, "It's gonna sound good in the studio." I was like, because I used the exact same studio monitors that he was using, which I have the KRK5s. Also, I was like, well, how about this? How about you put it on the big studio monitors? And then when he did put it on the Hafners gave it was very, very, very high in the high frequency spectrum, and it was almost piercing at that level because we was listening to it extremely loud. Even the cuts themselves, like from the turntables, was massively loud that I lay down. And as you can see right here, that's mastering compensation right here. As a matter of fact, I have three forms of mastering compensation. This is not being applied because that's in the dry part of it's dry right now. It's not wet. Now that'd be wet. This is dry. That's what I mean. But yeah, as you can see right here, look at that. There's a resonance boost right here on this one. And I believe, yeah, and then there's two resonance peaks, one in the mid lows and then one kind of in the mid highish area. And that was the issue, you know what I'm saying? And I told him, I was like, hey, you know what? I can actually fix this right now. So I had the laptop there, and just knowing the mixing concept of just keeping it simple and whatnot. I was just like, you know what? Hey, I got things that I could do right here, and I'm just going to pull up. And for the sake of just music or whatnot, I'm not argue about certain plugins being better than others, but yeah, I was just like, I could just do this right here, and it's gonna sound much better. It's gonna sound much better.
Listen.
And it was kind of funny because when he turned around and looked, and that is much more balanced. It obviously, once again, the kick drum is still loud. The snare now is not as sharp as it was in the actual mix, but however, it has a better balance because of that, and the fact that there's no exact EQing on there, there's no mastering compensation. It is bringing out a better mix overall. And the reason why I'm saying that is because all the frequencies are flat. So that way, when you go and you're listening to things, like if you listen to a home theater, which has a tendency to have a slightly digital saturation, which another concept of mixing and mixing MIPS is and whatnot. Like I said, with analog gear, is that people have gotten used to listening to certain amounts of artifact saturation that analog gear added to music just cause that it's became the norm. Like it became, hey, like this is the way you listen to music, you know what I'm saying? And so with that being said, in the digital world everything is much cleaner, so it sounds kind of like not correct per se. I'm just waiting for press work to pull up. Come on, baby. Whoa, that was weird. There we go. But yeah, actually, if not all, because I can pull up Maximus in this mix itself. They add that post saturation, just to give people that feel of a analog mix, and that is also can be located on Maximus as well in FL Studio. So but anyways, yeah, just keep it in mind if you're actually doing if you're actually doing a mix or whatnot, hey, that is awesome. What a cool update. But in a mix or whatnot, that you can detrimentally damage your mix, and then it will only sound good on those speakers if you use kind of a master compensation, which on this right here, on this mixing cabinet, I had that. Now the correct location for mastering compensation in general, move down, is right here. if you are going to use master compensation to actually hear how, kind of channel how it will sound on different like gear or whatever that you're listening to music on, or devices. There we go. That's the word I really wanted. But yeah, so just keep that in mind because for the most part, it will sound good. Listen. But it's an overall message, as you see. But yeah, that engineer, he had his experience. He's been working in the game for about 20 or so plus years or so, and has Grammys and whatnot. And but he himself could not identify why, when we had bounced it down and listened to it in the car, why it sounded so much different in the car, and why it didn't sound so then why it sounded so weird in like the loudspeakers and the big monitors. And it's because it's stuff like mastering compensation. So you have to when you approach and master, it's not acceptable to believe that you're actually adding EQ to your overall song on a master when you're mastering, and it's gonna sound better, and it's a part of mastering. It's not. It's a part of the mix. Because if you feel that hey, the snare is dull or whatnot, and it doesn't have enough highs, add the highs to the snare. Don't add the highs to the actual to the whole entire song just to try to boost the snares, because what you're gonna end up doing is you're gonna end up messing up the vocals of the artist, because the artist might already have a certain amount of highs in their voice. So that's why that concept of EQing in masters is kind of ridiculous. Well, it's not kind of, it is ridiculous. So just keep that in mind, guys, when we do stuff like that. So in general, I just wanted just to point certain things out, because I know a lot of people get that misconstrued or whatnot, and it really is going to affect what you're going to do as far as your mastering or in your mixing. So that is not something you want to do. I don't care what anybody says. Trust me, because it's going to sound crazy, and I don't mean crazy in a good way, when you go to different devices or different places to listen, environments to listen to your music. Or it's not going to sound very good. But yeah, this is DJ Ad McCree. If you like this video, just give it a like. If you have any more, if you want to continue this argument, which is fine with me, just keep it cordial in the comment section. Just don't disrespect nobody. Don't disrespect me. And, just keep it cordial. We're all engineers and we all are producers, and we all are just trying to learn from each other. But I just wanted to show off that particular theory, or, why certain things you don't want to add EQ to a master. So, yeah. But leave a comment. And it's your first time watching a video by me, please subscribe and check out some more videos. I got more interesting videos where we talk about mixing and mastering. I actually have a playlist available for anybody's viewing pleasure. If you want to learn more about mixing and mastering, if you just don't have any concept of it at all. But just keep things simple. That's pretty much the topic here that we're talking about. So this is DJ McCree, and I appreciate everybody. Visit djadmccree.net. Yeah, and all my social media links if you want to get in contact with me. And yeah, and I'm out.